In today's video, I'm going to be building up the Panzer V Panther, which was a very popular tank in World War II. I was going to start with a painting video for bolt action or Achtung Panzer. However, this model was hard enough to put together that I thought, hey, I probably need to make a video on how to properly assemble this. This kit was made for Warlord Games by Italieri. And to work on this, you'll want a good hobby knife like this, and then also you'll want a pair of proper snippers. You want the ones with nice thin blades like this to handle the more delicate cuts. And then you'll want a good glue like Tamiya. The kit is actually pretty simple. It only comes with 2 sprues and a whole bunch of parts attached to it. Here's one sprue, and then here is the other right here. Here are the instructions that came with the set, and I'm going to be going panel by panel. Starting with panel A right here, you're going to be putting together the tracks on the right hand side of the Panther. This is the number 15 road wheel that you're going to use, and this is the drive wheel. I used my hobby clippers and carefully cut them off. When cutting the drive wheel, be careful not to cut off this little nib over here. You want to keep it. Next, you're going to be removing the steel tracks here as well as over here. Just carefully clip them until all the parts fall off. Cut out part number 6 over here. It is part of the drive wheel. Be careful of the little nib, don't cut it off. Throughout this video, wherever you see some sprue residue from where you had cut it off of the sprue, you'll want to use your hobby knife, and with a careful paring motion like I'm showing here, gently remove these leftover pieces of plastic carefully, layer by layer, making sure to not cut too deep into the part. Just carefully go one pass after another and remove layer after layer until these little pieces of residue are gone. Now let's start assembling. I'm going to be using some Tamiya glue, and I'm going to put the drive wheel right here with the rest of these road wheels. This is keyed, so it only really goes in one way. So you put part number 6 in here, align it until it lines up, and then press it in place. Be careful not to use too much force. You want to make sure that everything lines up first. Now put the second part of the drive wheel, number 12, right over here. Again, line it up until the keys are in line with each other, and then push them in place like this. The next part is going to be completely up to preference. You can either leave these parts apart so it's easier to paint, but I prefer painting fully assembled, and in my next video I'll show you how. To put on these tracks, notice that the road wheels here are a little bit higher, which lines up with the shape of this track number 3 here. Put a generous amount of cement right on top of the road wheels like this, because this is where the tracks are going to touch it. And when you put the tracks on like this, contact between the wheels and the tracks will bond them in place. Put some pressure and allow it to set, and then as it's setting, you can apply the next track at the bottom of it over here. Make sure to put glue at the very ends like I'm showing here. That's where the tracks are going to want to bind together. And then when you put the lower track on, make sure you press everything in place and keep good pressure until at least the glue sets and holds it in place. And the next step is a little tip. I'm going to be putting in the toe clevises over here, which are number 8. There are actually 4 of them. Do not use the clippers here. These are very delicate parts. Use a sharp hobby knife and then a gentle sawing motion until the part dislocates right here, and then do the same for the other clevises. Now when you do this step, you want to be very careful. Do not apply too much force on these. Just gently saw them until they come loose like this. Clean the clevises, lay them flat against a cutting mat, and then slowly remove the excess material like I'm showing here to clean them up. Next, I put some cement right over here in these clevis joints here. And the reason why I put the clevises on now is because it's actually a lot more accessible when the tracks are off the body. So I find it easier to put on the clevises at this step instead of later like the instructions show. I put a clevis on the front as well as the back of the track. Next, for frame B, you're basically doing the exact same thing, but now for the left hand side. I don't necessarily have to repeat all the steps. You're going to be using the other set of track parts right here, whatever is left of the tracks and the road wheels and so on, and you'll be building the mirror image of what you had done in frame A. Frame C is actually pretty simple. It's just the rear or aft of the tank and the exhaust that go on it. This is what it looks like fully assembled. The exhaust pieces are a little bit spindly, so be careful cutting them out. Now it's time to put assemblies A, B, and C onto part number 2. You want to cut out part number 2 like you have any other part before it. Use your hobby knife to clean up all the sprue residue. This is really important to make sure all the parts go onto it without any gaps. Now apply cement to the back of part number 2 like this in these areas, and then put section C into place, lining up the 2 slots, and then applying enough pressure to get rid of the gaps between the 2 parts like this. For the tracks, like over here, you want to make sure that the drive wheel is towards the front of the tank, and then afterwards apply a copious amount of glue to these 2 slot areas here, and then along this bottom edge right here as well. Next, take assembly B, line them up in the slots, and then press it in place, hold it until everything sets properly. And then repeat this on the left hand side of the tank for segment A. Be sure to apply enough pressure so that the tracks are able to bond and stay in place, and after this, the lower half of your tank is done. Next is segment E, which is the upper part of the tank. There are quite a lot of parts to put on here and a few tips that I can dole out for certain sections. So you'll just want to cut out all the things that are pointed out in the instructions. They all look distinctively different, so it's okay to cut them all out. They are all pretty easy to tell apart. This 7.62mm machine gun looks a little bit spindly, but it is safe to cut off with your cutters as long as it's sharp. As usual, clean off all the sprue residue with your hobby knife, and then these parts over here, which are the spare track links, actually have these little sprue leftovers here. You want to cut them off. They look like little balls. There are also longer cylindrical parts like this gun cleaning tube over here, which is part number 30, may have mold lines. You can use your hobby knife like this and gently run it over the surface to act like a mold line remover. Okay, now let's talk about part number 20, this little machine gun. If you try to fit it into this front slot over here, front or back, it just doesn't fit, which makes me wonder why they even designed it this way. You want to cut off the machine gun right here with your hobby clippers, and then just apply glue to it like this. And now, finally, it will fit in the hole, and once it's set in place, it'll look right at home in the co-driver's position. For the driver's periscope here, you want to apply a little bit of cement under these 2 holes and then put part number 32 carefully in this area, and it will look like this. The hole in the middle right of the tank hull here is for the jack block. This is part number 21, glue it in place. And then the holes on the rear of the tank, there's 2 on each side, are holes to glue on the spare track links. Apply cement at the 2 holes and also in the middle to get nice good adhesion, and then place the spare track links in place and push them in position. The instructions said that front hatch number 34 can be model opened, but I didn't have an Achtung Panzer crew member to drop in here, so I just sealed it shut. The 2 holes in the front of the tank over here are for part number 16. Now another pro tip alert, when you put on part number 30, the gun cleaning tube over here, first of all, you want to bore these holes out a little bit bigger, otherwise the nibs don't fit. Now after you make these holes bigger, you want to apply some glue to it, and then after that you want to put part number 30 on. While it's setting though, you want to make sure that it's flush with the top of the hull, otherwise the turret is not going to be able to assemble later on. The front headlight number 29 goes in this hole right here. Note that this headlight might need a little bit of finagling to get nice and straight. I'm going out of turn again and cutting off antenna number 1 and also cleaning it over here with very gentle strokes of my hobby knife right here. Do not cut too much into the material or else it will break in half. Put some glue right here in this hole and put the antenna number 1 on. It will not get in the way of the turret later on. Now we get to put both halves of the hull together. I have one tip for this step. If you had applied the clevises onto the tracks earlier on, you'll want to slide the hull in this way, kind of like behind the clevises. If not, it will block you. So make sure to go underneath it like I was showing you. Once you dry fit it and everything works, you want to put cement all along the edges, all around the tank's hull front and back. Put copious amounts so that it has a nice strong bond. Again, you want to just kind of slide it in at the front like that, drop it in place, and then it will kind of sandwich into position like I'm showing here. Apply enough pressure so that both halves bind together. Now for these big flat rectangular parts called the Scherzen skirts, which are protection for the tracks. Because these really do block the road wheels, I highly suggest leaving them off while you're painting so you have access to the road wheels. You can always glue them on later. Alright, we're at the home stretch. Everything else that's on the sprues you can go ahead and cut out. These are all for the turret areas of the tank. And as usual, when you get close to anything spindly like the machine gun, be careful not to cut anything off and use your hobby knife for precision cuts if you need to. I would look for mold lines on the main gun barrel and make sure that you remove those mold lines with your hobby knife as you go. The cupola mounted machine gun is very delicate, so be sure to use very gentle strokes when you're removing any sprue residue on it, like I'm showing here. Just kind of take your time and do small strokes. And likewise with this little grip piece that goes around the cupola, be careful not to break it. Now it's time to work on frame G, which is the main gun. You'll want to take part number 36 over here and then just press fit it into part number 25. Adjust the keyway so it's straight up and down, and then apply some glue to this area right here. Next, part number 31 should be allowed to rotate freely within part number 25. Just kind of hold it in place over here for the next step. You want to put the main gun onto part 31 and let it set in place without gluing onto part 25. And if you do this correctly, you'll be able to adjust elevation on this gun. Onward to frame H, you want to put the main part of the turret together. The turret body is going to be part number 37. Apply some glue to the rear over here all throughout the periphery of the window, and then drop part number 17 into place and press it until it sets. Then apply glue all along the edge of the turret over here in its recess, and then once you have enough glue, apply part number 35 into it. It just drops in place. Hold it there until it sets. Frame I puts the turret all together. You're going to be applying first of all part G onto this area here. You'll apply some glue onto these two slots and also at the bottom here, and then after that take assembly G. These little horns are going to face down, and then put the nibs into the slot and push it in place. Allow it to set like this. Now cupola piece number 27 has different size holes. There's 3 that look similar and 1 of them that is not. The slightly larger hole is for the cupola hatch like I'm showing here, while the other 3 holes are for the cupola handlebars. Also included in your sprues is this commander model. You can mount it like this, like I'm showing here. Now note the position of the cupola hatch. It actually opens and then swings aside, which was a design feature of this tank, so make sure when you model it that the hatch follows the same behavior like I'm showing here. You also have the option of modeling the hatch closed. If that's the case, just put glue all around the periphery and then put number 33, which is the hatch, in position, and it will look like this. Next, you want to put glue on the other 3 holes and then apply the handlebar onto this area. The handlebars are part number 28, and you'll have to slowly finesse it into place and then allow it to stick. Next, put some plastic cement in these 2 holes here and also around the periphery if you want, and then drop the cupola in place. The 2 little nibs that go into these holes can sometimes be hard to fit. A little bit of sideways force on these nibs really does help. Next, apply some glue right here. This is for the machine gun. Put a copious amount so that when you put the machine gun on, it immediately starts binding to it, and then slowly move the machine gun into position so it looks like this. Now it's time to put everything together. Let's start with the turret. This is not going to be glued in place. What you're going to do is just line up the keyways of the turret with the keyways on the hull, and then it will just kind of slide in place like this. The shirts and skirts should just be press fit in place, so during gameplay you can actually remove them to not have the skirts, or you can put the skirts on. And it also allows painting of the road wheels to be much easier. And just like that, congratulations, you've built your Panther. Be sure to follow along my next video where I paint this tank in camouflage German colors. Until then, happy hobbying, and I hope to see you in the very next video.